Lamptey Show. My name is Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
All right, mate.
And by Neil.
Hello.
Everybody's hearts back, set and safe after the events of Saturday night?
A bit tense, weren't it?
Well, of course. Well, I had been saying before the game, what's there to be too nervous about? I think I said to Paul that you wouldn't be excited about seeing the first half of a film. And then, of course, after about 10 minutes, I nearly had a nervous breakdown for the entire rest of the day.
I think everybody did, didn't they?
Just,
plus the rain didn't help.
Yeah, it was
put everybody in a bit of a weird mood.
It's just a bit much, weren't it? Yeah. Moments of the week, then. Paul, do you want to start us off?
I'm going to go for something I haven't seen many comments on, and we didn't really know what happened at the time. I'm going for Burgess' save, where he basically volleyed the ball away for a corner.
Oh, yeah, that was quite something, weren't it?
The old fallback technique, yeah.
Yeah, because at the time, I think where we were, in the first half, we were sat near the goal at cover attacking, quite low down. So you got no depth perception. And I think we're all expecting some more to happen than what did happen. And we didn't quite understand what happened anyway. That isn't using the word happen way too many times. And then, having watched the video back, to see Burge basically falling backwards and then volley it clear, that was quite a remarkable, quick bit of thinking. And I haven't seen that mentioned anywhere, so I'd just like to give Burge a bit of kudos for what was a great little bit of quick-wittedness.
Just imagine if he'd mistimed it and overhead kicked that into the net. I mean, that's blooper material, isn't it, for the rest of the time? So I don't quite understand what he was doing falling backwards in the first place, but to readjust like that was pretty good.
Yeah, it was all a bit strange, wasn't it? I mean, I was going to say we've defended him, but I think he's just played well all season, hasn't it? But we would struggle to defend him on that, just overhead kicking the ball into your own net in the playoff semi-final.
I was going to say that's turning the people who are 50-50 into haters, isn't it? I mean, there's not much coming back from that.
Quite. Paul, you've just done yours. Who's the other person?
Yes,
Neil. Neil,
hello there. I have two. So first one was me, you, Paul, and Ed.
I know.
All being within the same 5-yard vicinity for the first time ever. That was pleasant. Like I say, it was raining, and it kind of ruined the moment somewhat because we just didn't want to get quite that soaked. But no, that was quite nice.
It was like you say,
it was a bit surreal. I felt sorry for people who were stood near us, just thinking, this is a bit odd. I sort of know those four from somewhere.
What are these voices? These famous voices?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody thought that, but
no.
It was a little bit like, I imagine, the Beatles on the rooftop. I think is probably a more apt thing. Yeah, no, it was strange because of the nature of the rain, wasn't it? And I think because we hadn't planned to meet up, it was a little bit awkward almost, wasn't it? But it was lovely being in the presence of all of you at the same time.
Yeah, so that was good. It started put me in a better mood than when I arrived at the ground. And then my moment of the week is actually getting the penalty. Rather than, weirdly, when the penalty was going on, I kind of all used up all my excitement celebrating the fact that we just got something. And I realised, oh shit, we've actually got to take it. But, I mean, let's face it, quite how we're getting that penalty, I don't know. But it was just... because I couldn't see it. We hadn't got a shot on target pretty much all game, I don't think. It didn't look like we were creating anything. And then just out of nowhere for the ref, when I was not expecting it to point for a penalty, he suddenly thinks, shit, this is huge. Yeah, I jumped up a little bit because I spent most of the game trying to be really calm and annoying everybody with my calmness, but and sent me a little bit loopy.
Did you hear Robbins' description of the penalty?
No, I didn't. What did he say?
Master of understatement as usual. He said, "I've seen it back, and I'll be honest with you. If that had have been against us, I'd have been disappointed with it."
Good one, Mark.
Yeah.
I showed it to my work colleague this morning, and I saw basically, I accept this isn't a penalty, but if you watch their defender, as soon as he puts his hands up in the air.
Yeah.
In that, I haven't touched him, Gov, and you're like, but. I don't understand why he did that. Because as soon as he did that, I don't know why. I don't know about anyone else, but you sort of then looked at the ref to see if he was going to do anything, because that almost said to the ref, something's happened.
Yeah.
There was a combo of things, weren't there? So there was that reaction, but also there's this sort of optical illusion thing going on where he kind of, I'm guessing at certain angles, it may look like he's taken the leg first, and I don't know whether the ref is the one who's seen that angle. I mean, it's clearly, I don't think that has happened, but I think combine that with that weird old reaction from a player who is, I think Stokes did exactly the same thing when he got booked, where he fouled the player, then put your arms up and say, I have not touched him. But we know players are liars. So, yeah, I think that little combo of things made a rubbish, weak ref make a really poor decision.
But it was one of the worst decisions I've ever seen. The only one I can think of as weird was, don't know if you remember, I think it was against Leicester at the Rico, and I think Leon Best got a penalty once, and we had a corner and it came in, and then the referee just pointed to the spot.
I do like those ones. They're my favourite.
Just that, I don't understand what's gone on. It's sort of, I think he's sort of pointing to the guy who stood near Leon Best, but Leon Best was sort of stood there looking just as shocked as everyone else. And I think it was like no one really celebrated. I mean, the only thing that's come out of this is all the Notts County fans who are sort of going, "Oh, Bayliss dived." He just fell over. He got tackled and fell over. I don't how he could have fallen over any less than he did. He didn't. I don't think he was elaborate with it. I think he got tackled.
Take real issue with this idea that it's either a dive or a foul. There's quite clearly a middle. You can go down without being fouled. Sometimes he's got the ball. It's just people go, it's either one or the other. No, it's not. Football isn't black and white. There's so much going on in between, and it just wasn't a dive. He went to the ground. I mean, he's not going to then say to the ref, in the playoff semi-final, that was fine. I mean, he's not Robbie Fowler, is he? He's a young kid trying to get a penalty team. So.
The other thing is that, and maybe I'm reading too much into this. I almost certainly am. But in the previous game against Morecambe, he went down in the box for what looked like a penalty, and we'd all said then he doesn't go down, does he? Of all the things, if there's one thing that marks him out, it's the fact that he's so hard to bring down when he's on a run, and you do wonder to what extent the referee sees him go down, having not gone down once all game. And gone, well, if he's going down, maybe it's a foul. But I think much more, I agree with you, Paul. I think, one, the very initial reaction from the player that brings him, that gets the ball, let's be honest about what happened, and then standing there with his hand over his mouth, you just think it's like you're trying to con him into giving us a penalty.
Caricature. It was just ridiculous reaction, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Be angry. Do something. Don't stand there. Look.
I mean, I would have been off my head. I mean, I'd have attacked him.
So I think the player, we in the stand were just sort of, I think he was just shocked. I think almost if he'd have tried to blag it, or if he had have fouled him, I think the guy was literally just stunned in that sense of, how have you given that? Almost sometimes you can't be angry when something that peculiar happens because you're so in shock of it happening that you can't actually register or you can't process it quickly enough to be angry. You just sort of, what?
But that's like cartoon shock, isn't it? It's not. I mean, I don't think I've ever been that shocked where I've put my hand over my mouth and gone wide-eyed and thought, this is what I must look like to be shocked. It was a real sort of. Yeah. There's something weird about the reaction, which it already happened, so it doesn't really matter afterwards. But you thought just be angry or something like that. Richard Duffy had to be angry for him. I thought. I don't like Richard Duffy. Do you?
I'd have him playing for us this season. He's been good.
I like him more than Tom Davies does.
Well, yeah. More on that later. My moment of the week is non-game related. I want to talk about Chipgate for a second. Paul, I don't think, bearing in mind that you were with us, I don't think you witnessed any of this. Right, there was Jimbo oft mentioned of this parish. I was stood in the row behind him, and this guy he was walking along with 3 trays of chips stacked one on top of each other in one hand, right? And he, without raising any sort of audio attention to his presence, he tried to walk in the narrow gap behind 2 people that were stood up, right, with these really precariously balanced trays of chips, right? And I tapped Jimbo and said, "Watch out, there's a guy trying to get past you, right?" But then I maybe watched him for another 3 or 4 minutes. I had to genuinely, the lad I was with, I had to keep saying to him, "We've got to watch the game," but I can't take my eyes off this guy, who then he must have walked maybe 50 seats worth of precarious journey. Like, never once attempting. He got a totally free other hand, but these other trays of chips that were just about to fall off, and he was looking like he was trying to take the most perilous route back to his seat, which was miles away from. The other thing was, he had to have gone up the most inappropriate concourse to get back to his. It was bizarre. It was like a David Lynch film. It just
Did he make
seemed.
it?
Yeah, he made it perfectly against all the odds. It was so weird. It was it really freaked me out, and I felt like I was having a panic attack most of that game anyway. Really serious derealisation during that game. I was like, what is going on here?
That cemented it, didn't it? Bloody hell.
Just like I said, chips properly piled high, so it was really uneven at the top, and they just got them in. None of it made sense. It really freaked me out, but it was good.
I'd love them to be a listener.
I
Someone to write in and say, "I am the chip man."
If you were the chip man, please get in touch and tell us whether that's. What were you thinking? Yeah, okay. There was a game on while that was happening, apparently. Neil, I think with a game like that, the pertinent question to start off with is, how did you feel afterwards?
I felt okay. And okay is the right word to use here, because throughout the match, I was trying to sort of provide myself with some sort of restraint. So I was trying not to get too mad about mistakes, and especially with the pitch and everything. So there was a lot going on around me. There was a lot of noise, a really sort of tense atmosphere, people getting proper angry. I wanted to be kind of the little voice of reason in the middle of it, just sort of watching it and observing it. But it's very hard in that atmosphere when there's so much at stake. So getting that goal made a big difference. I'm not sure how I would have felt if we'd lost that match. I probably still would have been okay, but that goal really did help sort of calm me and kind of solidify my feelings about how the match kind of went. I think the first thing to mention is just we have to mention the rain, which came pretty much out of nowhere, and I don't quite understand how it did that to the pitch in such a short amount of time, because that was, I mean, that first half pitch, especially in our area, that corner of the pitch, that left-hand side,
Yeah.
where we seem to have this propensity to want to try and play at all times, which made absolutely no sense to me at all. I don't know if they were kind of accidentally drawn there, but they just kept seeming to want to play in that left-hand side of the pitch. It was just, it really hindered us, and it hindered them as well. But for that sort of such a big game, to have that leveler kind of ruining things a little bit was really frustrating for me watching it, because you couldn't really trust your own judgment about the players, and the players couldn't trust their own judgment with their touch. And there were so many times where, as much as they knew that the ball was going to slow down or was going to skip off, they still couldn't get the judgment right. And it was very hard to watch that first half, because I actually felt that from a sort of an intensity point of view, I thought we started really well. I thought there was a lot of purpose about our play. We kind of harnessed the crowd. People like Shipley were kind of really on it, getting onto the ball as much as he could. And I was pretty pleased with how we were looking at the gaps, and we were trying to kind of finding some space with the ball.
Can I just quickly jump in for a second? Because this is one of them things that let's link those two things together. You were talking about that area of the pitch. You were talking about Shipley. We spent a lot of time last week talking about what's the impetus for people going on the pitch. How I stopped myself from jumping on the pitch in front of him and just pointing to all the water on it. It was like he lost his goddamn mind. I don't understand
wasn't it?
how often did he have to try and play short passes that got stuck in the water before he realised that it wasn't happening. It was bizarre. I said to Paul after the game, it was like somebody had programmed him to play before the game. Like they'd already set all of his coordinates in and everything, but they hadn't adjusted for the water. I don't understand how he didn't work out what was going on.
But
and
also
I love him.
He actively running into the area. I can see where if there's only one pass and you have to make it, he'd make it. But when there's the whole pitch ahead of him and he could move central, he was like, "No, I'm going left here, guys."
You just think, no, no.
What are you doing?
The other funny bit of context was the fact that about 5 minutes into the game, Joey went, "One of the reasons I like Shipley is he's quite a smart player."
Yeah, and then
And after
just
about his
you like,
18th attempt to play the first time ball through the water, which got stopped, yeah, I think Joey was getting more mocked than Shipley at that point. Because it was just sort of one of those unfortunate things where you say something and then the player does everything in his power to counteract it.
It was a really daft, actually, performance. I think just decision-wise, it was constant, and it wasn't just first half. Actually, second half, Shipley, he made some good passes, but I think of all the players on the pitch to struggle with the conditions, he certainly did not adapt at all, and he was trying to play as if they weren't there. And
yeah,
it's like, no, that's quite important. There's things going on here, Jordan, which mean you can't play in that corner. You can't. And also, when he was running the ball, he was still trying to have the same sort of pace of touch as he would do, and that's why he just wasn't judging it at all. Which is it was a shame for him, because I think he had the right mentality. He was really up for the game. You could see he was pumped. He was ready to go. But that weird pitch just really threw him, and
But it was his pass that put McNulty through when he hit the post, wasn't it?
which was brilliant. It was a
Which
really,
was
really sick pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Oh
Which
yeah,
is
yeah,
a brilliant pass.
on the good side of the pitch.
Yeah.
And I don't want to I don't want to be. I don't think you can be too critical of anyone really when that watery pitch comes into it. But if there was anybody, it was him, because I just think, and I know it's unfortunate for him that that's where he plays, but just change your position, or even not even just change your position, but just put it in the air a little bit. Stop trying to just really finesse passes short. You just think you've done this too many times to not know that it won't work. Sorry.
The point where he'd done it too much was about 10 minutes in, and then he just continued on and on. It was the thing is that with our team and with our players, especially this season, I've learned to accept mistakes. Like they just happen so often throughout the game. I really don't care if a player miscontrols it now or anything like that, because it just feels like, okay, that's the level we're working at. There's more important things to concern ourselves with rather than players making mistakes. So even Grimmer's mistake for the goal, and I'm jumping ahead here, but Grimmer's mistake for the goal, it was a mistake, but there's so much other stuff that you can look at and you can kind of value him for and try and get the best out of him with. So like the whole tenacity thing and the whole making up for errors and just kind of working as hard as you possibly can. So even if you do make a mistake, you're still putting in absolutely everything. And that's kind of what I'm valuing most this year. But I think it's decisions more than mistakes. And I don't know if they're the same thing or not. But I kind of feel like decision-wise the other night, that's where we struggled quite a bit. And it was... We look quite good in sort of parts. So McNulty was handling the ball okay, and even Bayliss was looking good with it as well. But when it came to actually making the right call or making the right pass, or even just taking a little bit of time just to kind of assess the options, because there was time. I mean, we try and make out that it was a sort of a high intensity match, but there was enough time for players to kind of get their head up. And a good example of this was, I think, when Bayliss went through, and as he was running through, he'd already made his mind up. I'm going to cross or shot, whatever he did. I'm going to do this with the ball. Where there's kind of you don't have to commit to that motion. You can change your mind. I mean, things evolved in front of him, and there was actually a space for him. He could have taken a touch, and it was things like this which make it hard for me more than the actual mistakes, because mistakes are just kind of innate. They kind of happen based on a lot of other things, but decisions, you just sort of think, well, you want players to at least learn. So, and even when older people, you've kind of still got the mind where you're making the right decisions, even if your body can't do what you want anymore. And I always think that the mind is the one that you've kind of got a little bit more control over than anything else. So yeah, it was a tricky pitch, and I'm not going to criticise the players for making too many errors on it, but I just felt like they were almost too up for it in a sense, when it was kind of, they were rushing most of their decisions. And while we gave them a good old game in the first half, I thought we were really on it, and there were lots of opportunities to kind of find a way through, and most of the time we were sort of hindered by the pitch or our own sort of decision making. I think aside from McNulty hitting in the post, I can't really think of any time when we actually went that final step and created the opportunity, which was a disappointment because with all the chaos that was going on around in the defence, with just the tricky pitch and everything, it felt like there was an opportunity there to get a goal or two in that first half, even if it was by luck, and we didn't really capitalise. And then second half, they did pretty much, they took advantage straight away with it was basically a 50-50, and Jack Rimmer made a bad decision. He tried to knock it round a player who had already started sliding in 15 yards before he got to the ball, and ultimately the player got there first. And it was, the wing, good wing play by their guy. He obviously got there first and he put the good ball in, and it was a fantastic finish. At that point, I still thought it was Amiobi on the pitch, which messed I wasn't very happy with it. But no, it was a great goal, and you could see kind of that actually helped sort of boost the intensity of the stadium, even if it didn't need it. I mean, they went absolutely berserk, and it was quite a good response from the fans as well in terms of kind of the noise that we made after that. And the only problem I had was kind of on the pitch where they didn't react very well to that goal at all, and the players for a good 10 minutes probably lost their way, lost their minds a little bit. Doyle, oh God, he went for a really sticky patch where he just couldn't make a pass, which for your captain, he's the one guy you're looking at to just kind of stabilise everything. And if anything, he was the catalyst for everybody around him sort of losing their head. And I was starting to worry at that point because we'd conceded the goal and we didn't seem to look like we were going to be able to kind of settle ourselves. And then we did. I thought we did settle ourselves. I thought we started to get the grips with things a little bit. The pitch wasn't quite as bad down that end, so we were able to kind of take the ball on a little bit. We still weren't creating anything. That was a frustration.
Yeah.
We couldn't quite make that final pass, but I think the gaps were opening. They were working things out. They were making sort of good movements. Grimmer was a constant threat down the right hand side. We'll have to say this now. He didn't actually put in a good ball all night, unfortunately. But the threat was there.
That's harsh. That is harsh.
Did he put in a good ball? Did I get one?
He put in one in about the 97th minute that wasn't crap.
Okay, well,
we put it on the it wasn't crap scale. It wasn't particularly the world's greatest cross. Most of his crosses were awful. But that one wasn't.
This is a role reversal, isn't it? I'm being called harsh about Jack Grimmer.
Well, the problem is, and it's... I'm sorry, I've interjected, but on the Grimmer thing, I just think that part of me feels like Notts County sort of weren't overly worried about... And it's not just Jack Grimmer putting in the crosses. It's also the fact that Jack Grimmer's putting in the crosses to 5'5" McNulty. I think Notts County were quite happy to see us going down that channel every time and dealing with Grimmer's crosses. Because the other thing is, if you want to be fair to Grimmer, there wasn't really any options in the box for him to actually hit either. But I think from a Notts County point of view, they were quite happy to see us going down that route because we didn't look like we were going to score down it, and they weren't particularly bothered by it.
The more I thought about it after the game, I think he was a little bit of what we've talked about in the past, of a victim of involvement, where I think that he was, especially when we were chasing the game, he was our predominant outlet, wasn't he? We would find him out on the right, and I think you're right. I think they did give him some space in there because they knew that, one, he was crossing into McNulty, who was unlikely to get it ahead of their two big centre-backs. And I think there is an element of which, he'd rarely found a man all night, but he hadn't got an awful lot to aim at, had he? And actually, if we're going to be trying to be balanced as much as possible, he didn't stop going all night, did he?
That's all I want from him. I honestly, he's one of those players where I really like him. And as much as I say he didn't make a good cross all night, like I said earlier, I value all the other stuff still. Yeah. So the fact that he has one of the hardest jobs in that team, because he is an absolute machine. He just keeps going. And every time, especially the other night, he was the only outlet. You're not going to get Chris Stokes doing the same thing down the left-hand side. We had to give it to Grimmer. And every time he got the ball, he'd do the same. He'd look forward. He'd drive on. he'd try and work out a way around it with Kelly or someone around him. But he was constant, and he'll do the same again on Friday night. And you can't sort of discredit him or say he's not doing well for the team, because that job he does at right back is really good for us. I mean, it's a shame that, like you say, there's no option in the middle, or that he wasn't able to find that cross. But I just think a lot of that was down to the legs. He was putting so much effort in actually with the ball. When he got to the actual point of putting the ball in, his legs had kind of gone. So it's a shame, because, like you say, he was our only outlet, and we could have done with a little bit of quality on that final pass. But I wouldn't want to criticise him for that.
The only disappointment for me slightly is that, and I think the tiredness and when it was in the game played into it significantly, so it's not an overt criticism, but the 2 goals that we scored against Lincoln, and the chance that McNulty had and the chance that Bayliss had is demonstrative of the fact that there's another way, and that way is trying to get down to the byline, or to try and get the ball out there quicker, and not be aiming to pull out wide and fire across into the box. It's to try and either pull in ever so slightly narrower and either get it in low and back, or possibly even get a shot away if you've got the ability to do so. And I think that it was a shame overall. And I think, like I say, that pitch was impossible. It was very late in the game, but it was a shame in the last 5 minutes that it was a sort of, a constant barrage of hopeful, floated crosses, because I just think we had to know that they had no chance of. It feels like a very game planless thing to do, of just, law of averages. If we float enough balls in there, we might just get on the end of one of them, and you just think, well, we not really. I don't think that'll work. Especially
when Duffy was in that mood as well. He was in the sort of that zone where he wasn't going to allow anything around him, past him, and it was, it was not really the option. But we did have another option, and that was Tom Bayliss. And we haven't mentioned much about him tonight, the other night, except the penalty. But the class that he showed on the ball, pretty much all night long, was really impressive. And I always like, especially when we're kind of on TV, to do a bit of a Twitter search on kind of the neutral conversation around Tom Bayliss, just to see what other people are saying about him. And there were plenty of comments that night from completely random people just saying Bayliss from Coventry is a player. And they noticed it as well, because I don't like to feel like as Cov fans, we see it and we know what he is, so we kind of expect it. So everything he does, we build up as this fantastic quality. But it's always good to kind of validate that with what neutrals think, or people have seen him for the first time. And there were plenty of people thinking exactly the same as we are, which I'm pleased about. I mean, I know people like these players to go under the radar, but going under the radar means not playing very well. And right now we need him to be playing as best as he possibly can. And I think he put in a really mature performance the other night. I thought his touch with the ball on that horrendous pitch was exceptional, and just his ability to find time and drop his shoulder. And I think the best example of it was he had that shot with his left foot, but there was just a couple of little turns, little drops of his shoulder, and then he moved it onto his left and he put it wide. But that was, I mean, if you're going to do a little bit of a highlights reel, that's the one that you focus on. That's kind of all Bayliss. All you see from Bayliss really is that high quality sort of control on the ball. So yeah, I thought he had a great game, and we really need him to do exactly the same at their place, and maybe a little bit more of the old driving through the middle, because he's a weird player, Bayliss, because if you're going to rate him for like you got speed and acceleration, speed. Absolutely, really high. Once he gets motoring, nobody catches him. When he gets close to the box and it's quite tight, he does struggle to kind of move on. And he's a strange old player for that thing.
I thought Bayliss was the one player who made it look like the pitch wasn't wet in the first half. He was the one that was able to. He still was able to play to a certain extent in that area. They just, like you say, when he gets going with the ball, it's almost like it's almost impossible to stop him going forward. And I can't quite put my finger on why. Because he's not particularly elegant. Not that that's a bad thing or anything, but he's just so powerful.
Yeah, I don't know where he gets that pace from, because it doesn't come within that first yard. It's the next step. It will nudge it forward, and then he just gets moving, and then you just think, just keep going. Please just
Yeah,
keep going
go,
as far as
go,
possible.
go.
It's his touch, isn't it?
That's
one
the
thing.
thing, I think, yeah.
It's the first touch is always exactly where he needs it to be, which
Yeah.
quite a lot of the time against Notts County, his first touch put the opposing player on the back foot or disorientated him. And once you've got that first touch under your belt in a difficult situation, the other thing is he's happy to go both ways. So you don't know if he's going to go left or right. And that's really tricky. My only issue with him, to some extent, is I don't like him playing as a number 10. I think he gets the ball too often with his back to goal. And I felt on Saturday, it was literally, I turned to my mate halfway through the second half, I'm like, the only way we're going to get anything out of this is by a bit of magic from Bayliss, because we didn't look like we were going to score any other way. And what's frustrating is it took until the 87th minute for him to make his second driving run into the box. And the other player who's done that a lot recently was Liam Kelly, who reverted back to type, where he got to the edge of the area. And in recent games, he's been running then into the area, which is, on that sort of pitch, is quite difficult to defend against. And he just kept passing the ball back to Grimmer, or he went back to Doyle. And I thought that sometimes the lack of intensity from Kelly was a bit frustrating. Also, I felt in the first half, I didn't see the point of playing 4-3-3 with Biamu out wide, because on that sort of pitch, why allow them to have two defenders up against McNulty? Why not make it more difficult for their defenders? And there was that one where the ball sort of stopped in the rain.
Yeah.
And they could deal with it because they could easily block off McNulty. And you're like, if Biamu's there as well, if you've got two of them foraging around that, it's a lot more tricky to defend against. It requires a lot more thought. I felt we made it with the tricky conditions. With the fact that neither Biamu or Shipley are particularly quick, I don't think at times we made Notts County think enough about what we could do. I think sometimes our front three were just too easy to defend against in those conditions, because the ball wasn't running. It wasn't helping our sort of passing game, but it was no easier for Notts County because they didn't know if the ball was going to run or not. So why not make them answer more questions? I felt that was a bit frustrating, to be honest.
I had two additional sort of overall tactical criticisms. And one was that, to sort of extend from your point, Paul, I don't feel like we asked them enough difficult questions based on the pitch. So I think very specifically, there were a number of what looked like possibly questionable back passes that they played that I felt like we could have put more pressure on. And I just think their keeper rolled it out too light, didn't he, at one point in the first half, and we didn't really get near it. And I just think in this game like that, shake them up and make them, like, chasing it down like that, I just think scares people so much, doesn't it? That I really want to see that pressure exerted, with, again, the caveat that I imagine the pitch was tremendously heavy and it was very difficult to wade through a lot of it. But I would have liked to have seen that more. And the second thing was, I was surprised by the lack of long-range shots that we took.
Yeah.
You just feel
we had one shot on target all game. It's crazy, isn't it?
You just feel like on that pitch where their goal comes from a mistake that's based on the pitch. I was surprised there weren't more that came from there was a point in the first 10 minutes where you thought this is going to get called off, isn't it? And it turned out that it was because it was just that one area. If the whole pitch would have been like that, it would have been off, wouldn't it? You couldn't play through that, through the whole pitch. But I just was a bit disappointed that there wasn't more done to try and take advantage of it. It felt like we only let it be a hindrance to us, which I guess, but then, what the fuck do I know? It's probably ridiculous.
But the more I look back at it, I basically said that I thought we got away with it on Saturday night, and I got some, we were the only team trying to play football and all this sort of stuff. And I understand but I think we've got to go into the context of it's a two-legged affair where the winner gets to go to Wembley. And once Notts County went 1-0 up, they were under no obligation to try and score a second. It was down to us to equalise. And second half, I don't think we played particularly well. I don't think we asked enough questions. As Neil's stated twice, we had one shot on target, and that was down to a non-penalty. Whichever way we carve it up, the penalty shouldn't have been given. If the penalty hadn't been given, we'd have lost that 1-0. And I know people are saying we played really well, but at the end of the day, we only got a goal. We only got a shot on target due to a penalty which was wrongly given. In the second half, we were too easy for Notts County to defend against, and that is a concern for me. And I can't believe we played them 3 times this season. The first time we won 3-0. It was a pretty equal game apart from Jody Jones. And I know we don't have Jody Jones. I'm still surprised he didn't try Kyle Reid. And just because that's where our 3 goals came in that first game of the season. They came from someone being able to carry the ball and moving at pace. And we didn't try Kyle Reid. We haven't tried Kyle Reid in the 2 games we played against Notts County. And you were just like, this game, just having someone with that unexpected spark would have been really helpful. And when we put Ponticelli on it, I know he scored the goal against Meadow Lane, but he wasn't involved either. He couldn't get into the game. And I just feel, looking back at, the more I look back on it, the more I think we got bloody lucky in that second with that penalty. That's the only way you can describe the fact we're going into this second game on equal terms, regardless of whether or not you thought we were a better team or not. We didn't deserve to get that equalising goal because we didn't make their goalkeeper work. We were given a very lucky penalty, and we need to be a lot better on Friday, because Notts County have shown that they can go 1-0 up, they can sit and they can watch us, and they can watch Doyle pass the ball in their half, pass it sideways. They can watch Liam Kelly do it, and they weren't ruffled, they weren't scared, they weren't bothered. It took an absolute freak for us to get a goal. And we need to be better than that. We can't go into the game on Notts County and not accept the fact we didn't play well enough second half, because Notts County know their blueprint. They beat us once, and they were unlucky not to beat us on Friday, regardless of anything else that went on. Purely getting a goal, they did it, and we didn't do enough. And as I said earlier, these people were like, yeah, but Burge only had 1 save to make. It didn't matter. They scored. They scored with their 1 chance. But that was all Notts County wanted to do. You could see that. They were happy because I think they've lost twice at home all season. They're backing themselves. The main thing Notts County wanted to come out of the game from the Rico was not to lose. And they did that. And they did it relatively comfortably. So I think he's got some decisions to make with the Tom Davies thing, because he's going to be rightly banned. The stamp one, I've walked over many people in my life and managed not to stand on them unless I wanted to. And the second one, where he kicks the lad, I'm sorry, if that had been on McNulty, we'd be going apeshit. He's grabbed him and he's kicked
I've not seen it.
The kick's much worse. The kick's much worse than the...
Who did he kick? I don't even remember that one. Was that from a corner or something?
No. Basically, after we equalise, the ball gets punched up into the corner. The guy who scored the goal, he sort of bouncing around. He clears it. He then grabs him and kicks him. If you go onto Twitter and if you go onto YouTube, I think it's on the Sky highlights. They're about 3.5 minutes long, and they show him basically grabbing him and kicking him. And it's just like, I'm sorry, but you can defend the stamp if you want to, but you can't defend someone grabbing someone and kicking them. And I know Shoramiobi elbowed up, and he should have been banned, but I never liked this in football. It's like, yeah, but he shouldn't have done that. It's like, but I'm not defending Tom Davies because Shoramiobi should have been banned. You can't grab someone and kick them. It's just, I'm sorry, you can't do that. But I thought he had a really good game. Tom Davies probably had his best game in a Cov shirt on Saturday.
I thought he made a huge error for the goal. I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, maybe.
Not to say he didn't have a good game, because I do think he did. I like Tom Davies. I think I had him as my man of the match, actually, as I say that. At the same time, anybody else got any thoughts on that goal? Because I have no idea what he was doing when he was in front, blocking that front post, and then out of nowhere just charged out. I just don't understand what he was playing at.
I mean, no idea.
No.
It's just balmy. I mean, that is, as much as Grimmer didn't get the ball, him deciding to abscond has got just a bigger influence on that goal as Grimmer, really, as far as I can tell. It was a weird decision.
Neither of them covered themselves in glory on that one, did they?
No.
So, yeah, I think I'm surprised by how positive people have been about it, mainly because in the second half, I thought Notts County basically were happy with their 1-0 lead, and we just didn't produce enough. And then the substitutions were all a bit. Why not leave Biamu on the pitch and bring Johnson Clark? If you're going to play 4-3-3 where Ponticelli's main aim is going to be in around the box. Why just not leave Biami on the pitch? At least then you've still got the height. It just, I said, well, for me, we got lucky because we didn't in the second half. We didn't do enough.
Any final thoughts on the game itself then?
I just to say that while I don't think we played too good in the second half, I was reasonably pleased with kind of what our sort of intensity and our approach to the match. I think there were huge mitigating circumstances with the pitch. I think that threw everything off. But if you look specifically at kind of the way we applied ourselves, and while we didn't cope with the pitch very well, we at least put in a huge amount of effort, and we competed with them in loads of different ways. So I'm happy with that. And also, I'm completely blind in terms of I don't know what the next game is going to bring again, because it's not going to be that pitch again. So that throws out the window. And then also we're going to have a different defence from the looks of it. He's probably going to change a few other things. He'll probably bring Clark Harris back up front and stuff. So I can see why people would be happy. I wouldn't be overly happy with the way we performed because there were some mistakes in there. But we're well in it, and we are well capable of winning the match.
I do. I think we are well capable of winning the match. I think we have to play better than we did, and
I think we've got to play a lot better than we did.
Yeah, and I think the pitch first. I think the second half, I don't think the pitch hindered us that. If anything, I don't think the pitch hindered us at all. Really, second half, we were still moving it in exactly the same way we would have done if it had been a dry pitch. In the second half, the pitch didn't really influence the game at all. Where we were attacking, it didn't slow down. It wasn't doing it in the same way, not like the first half, where it clearly did have an impact. Second half, and I think this is why I think you can be fooled into thinking that we were the dominant team in the second half because we had all the possession. I think, as I said, Notts County were happy being 1-0 up, and they were happy just to take a 1-0 win. They didn't need to score a second because that would have given them the 1-0 lead in the second half. It was down to us, really, to force the game after they had scored, which we did, but in a really unproductive way. And we're going to have to think between now and Friday how we're going to get Bayliss more involved in and around their back box. How we're going to get, as Joey said earlier, how we're going to change our angle of attacks. If we're going to play Johnson, Clark Harris or Biami wide, how are we going to get them into the box as well? Because other than the Biami follow-up for the McNulty shot, I don't think he was ever really involved from an attacking point of view. He never thought that Biami was going to be involved in a goal or even a chance, which is crazy when you think how many goals Biami has been involved in alongside McNulty. Yeah. That 4-3-3 for me just didn't really work in that sense of I didn't see how those combinations were going to work. And I think going into it, I can see why Notts County would be relatively confident. I think we definitely need to up our game.
Let's not make out that the pitch was easy to play on, though, second half.
I'm not saying it was.
Compared to, obviously, the first half was farcical, and that was obscene, but that second half, it's still, for everybody, I mean, even though it wasn't quite as obvious, I mean, the concentration that they needed every single time, it wasn't easy. It was a hard game.
But as Joey said, we didn't. If the pitch is wet, have 25-yard shots. Try something else. And we did what we've seen Coventry do a lot this season, which is basically go down the right, give it to Grimmer, and put the ball in. We didn't have a plan B. We never looked like trying another option. We didn't make a substitution which gave us another option. We got very fortunate that the referee gave us an absolute clanger of a penalty. Other than that, in the second half, we didn't look like we were going to score. We didn't force 4 or 5 corners on the bounce. We didn't get their goal. As you said, the goalkeeper didn't have a save to make. And I know in the first half he did when it was more open. But if you're Notts County, you're not going to play an open game of football against us. And I think that's sometimes what people forget is I've seen a lot of things where it's like, yeah, we were the only team playing football. I appreciate that, but at the end of the day, all Kevin Nolan wants to do is get through to the final. He's not going to play an open game of football against us. He's not going to play. It's not going to be two teams playing football on Friday because Notts County are fully aware that we have better players in certain areas than they do. That's not their strength. Their strength isn't to play us off the park. So you've almost got to get it out of your head that that's how the game's going to go. They're going to play very much how they did on Saturday, which is their prerogative. All they're trying to do is win the game as much as we are.
There was an exceptionally telling moment at the very end of the game where I can't remember how it landed there. It was either someone had a shot, but basically somebody brought the ball forward on the edge of our area, a Notts County player in possession, and rather than go for a killer pass or whatever, they almost ran it into the corner. They were just looking to keep possession, and it was a really good opportunity to try and create an opportunity, and instead they went no. The key here is to not take a defeat back home, and I think that they will look at what happened on Saturday and say we were robbed for the victory, but that a draw was what we came here for at least, and we're very confident of doing the business at home. And I'm not to say that that's a predetermined thing but I think it's made it very, very, very difficult for us to have not taken a victory there. And I think that we're going to have to. I know I've banged on about this a load this season. I couldn't quite see what we were really trying to do for large periods of that game on Saturday, and I think that whilst the rough idea of a three-man midfield, assuming that's what it was, some people have said that we were playing a diamond. At times I just couldn't quite tell. I think the rough idea of having a midfield that is Bayliss, Doyle and Kelly I can live with, as long as Kelly is pushed further up trying to destroy from upfield, Bayliss is left to attack from deeper. But the problem for me is I think that it's what happens with three attackers. Shipley looks very comfortable on the left. I don't like McNulty playing up front on his own because I don't think he's a spearhead solo striker. And playing Biamu off the right is insane. Like, it's just, it doesn't... What on earth what's the point of that? You'd almost be better off playing Shipley out on the left and playing them two both in the middle and having nobody on the right and hoping that Bayliss sort of drifts into that position. But I just couldn't see what... It's that constant criticism and worry that I've had this season that Robins would prefer to put out the 11 players that he wants to put out rather than have a game plan that's more cohesive, that might sacrifice someone who on paper as an individual is more talented, but that doesn't... it costs the team a little bit. And I think, again, where we've struggled recently have been against the Lincolns, the Notts Counties of this world, where they have been not exceptional, but that very robust and very well disciplined and very well organised. I do worry that we will just sort of sleepwalk into a defeat on Friday. The other thing I would say is I was quite disappointed after the game that Robins described the players as being brilliant and whatever else. I almost think he didn't need to dig them out particularly, and I think he could have said the pitch was poor and we were lucky with the penalty and everything, but I am worried that he thinks that was a brilliant performance because it wasn't by any stretch of the imagination.
I thought it was 4-4-2. I thought it was Kelly supposed to be on the right but couldn't help but come into the middle, and it threw everything else off. For most of the games, I think that most of the game, I thought there was some periods where it looked a little bit fluid, but honestly, I was watching that game, I just assumed it was 4-4-2. Maybe I'll need to watch it back again.
So it was...
the army was far too wide. He was nowhere near McNulty for it to be a two up front. They just weren't...
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure.
Biami was, and then when Ponticelli came on again, because the thing with the other reason I say that is because the amount of times I saw Biamu tracking back to right back, which if he wasn't playing on the right, what the hell was he doing back there? And he did it more than he did it more than I want my target man striker to ever drift back to right back. And
but it's just so.
But we all know we're not playing 4-4-2. For the pure fact that he doesn't trust anyone to play on the right-hand side of midfield. And I think he believes that having Bayliss in the number 10 role and having Biamu in the nominal right of the front three is better than us playing 4-4-2 with Bayliss completely out on the right.
Okay, let's move on, shall we, to listener questions, yeah?
Yeah.
Now, I am normally the first to be hypercritical of... In fact, I'm going to go away from critical and say realistic from the poor quality of questions that we get. This week has been fabulous. Well done, everyone. Question here from Sky Blues blog. Was Davies' stomp the worst thing in sports since Mike Tyson's ear chomp? I think so. Ban him in the nude. Paul, how would you respond to that lunacy?
Well, I mean, that comment could only be made by someone who hasn't seen his kick later on.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah. The stamp one is just one of those things. I mean,
Can we stop calling it a stamp?
Oh, okay. He stood on Richard Duffy.
Only in football can things
True.
get elevated way beyond what they are. He stepped on him or he stood on him, but a stamp suggests like he raised his leg up and then like really forcefully shoved it down. By the time I saw it, I was so disappointed with what it was. I thought he'd really gone for it. People on Twitter were like, "Oh my god, he's going to jail." And I saw it, I was like, that's nothing.
The thing is,
it's
he
daft.
does put his-
The worst of it
he
is
does-
it's daft.
Yeah, I mean, basically, he stands on him in sense of he puts all of his weight on his right foot, which is on top of Richard Duffy. And if he hasn't worked out, but there again, it's difficult with Tom Davies because I'm not sure how much control he has over his legs anyway.
That could be his defence.
That
Yeah.
could be his defence. I mean, the silly thing is, it's one of those ones where if it's not your player, if it's against you, you go up in arms. If it's your player, you're like, oh no, he's not that type of guy. He's not that type of player.
Oh, he is.
And it's like, at the end of the day, I've managed to spend most of my life, if I want to stand on someone, I normally do.
Yeah.
I've managed, being a big clumsy fucker, never to have trod on either of my children, who are often underneath my feet. So, if you can he could have missed him if he'd have wanted to. He decided not to.
We all know what happened. He
Yeah,
meant
he's
it,
just-
but he meant it because he thought he could get away with it.
Yeah.
You don't think that he's in the
think-
heat of the moment. He thought, oh, here we go, give it a little bit of a jab, just to put a little bit on Duffy, without realising that all Sky cameras are on him, focusing on him, and it's just stupidity, isn't it? It's not like it's just.
Yeah,
daft,
Didn't
that's all.
Doyle come out today and say basically if you have cameras on us all time, and it's like, yeah, but Doyle, that's because you don't play in the Premier League
Yeah.
where there are cameras on you all the time.
But it's
You can't get away with that. And someone was like, "Well, is that never making a big deal of this because it was on Sky?" Well, that's because if it
was on
hadn't been on
Sky,
Sky,
yeah.
if it had had the normal one camera, they wouldn't have picked it up. But that's what happens when you're on. You have to be smarter when you're on Sky. You can't stand on people when the world of football is watching you.
Well, we'll find out what happens to him very shortly, I think, won't we? Let's stick with violence. A question on Twitter from Amrit. This one going to Paul. Who'd win in a fight between Johnson, Clark Harris and Doyle?
I think Johnson Clark Harris would do. In one of the Indiana Jones films where the guy does all the sort of karate kicks and then sort of Indiana Jones just shoots him. I think Johnson Clark Harris would do all sort of the moves and sort of do all the kung fu stuff, and then Doyle would just punch him in the knackers.
So you're going for Doyle. I thought you were going for Johnson, Clark Harris to start off with.
I think Johnson Clark Harris is more style than substance, and I think that would include
Do
him
you?
in the fight. Oh God, yeah.
Let's not forget that Doyle is 0 for 1. I think it'd be 0 for 2 after this.
I do too. I think there's a bit of a Pogba Mark Noble thing on the go there, where you've got the maniac Doyle thinking he's really hard, but then Clark Harris might just say, "Nah, get away from me." If he was really pushed, and just give him a bit of a whack.
Yeah, I would. I'm going for Johnson, Clark Harris there. So anyone at the club, if you want to set that up, so we can find out.
If you want to sort of do that, maybe after the playoff final. If you're it's like, extra time in the playoff final, just put up a boxing ring and let Johnson Clark Harris and
How
Doyle
about
slug it out.
How about this for an idea? Make that Michael Doyle's testimonial.
In a
Wembley.
Royal Rumble type way, just throwing loads of different old Cov players. Number 22, Big Mo Cognac. Yeah.
Oh my God! Can we make that happen?
This is Dragon's Den. Get it going.
Okay, next question from Chris Knowles on Twitter.
Oh, wonderful surname.
Best football-related snacks to counter the inevitable nail-biting finish and crushing disappointment. That's got to go to Neil, obviously.
Well, it depends on the heat. Crunchy, I think. It was always good. I had a crunchy at the weekend. It was really nice. Next question.
Question from Lee Bradbury. Despite being able to jump... See, Lee, I think you've got to be a bit careful here, I think. Despite being able to jump 3 feet into the air and tracking back to cover his fullbacks late into the game, How likely is it that Biamu will sadly find himself benched for the human pratfall that is Johnson Clark-Harris? He will seek you out.
One friend of the show, Paul Pritchard, isn't a big fan of Johnson Clark-Harris. And Johnson Clark-Harris came on the pitch and did his Johnson Clark-Harris thing where he ran down the left wing, could have put in a cross, could have shot, could have put in a cross, and then ran out of pitch. And he just turned to me and went, yeah. And it was almost like, I can't really argue with you at this point, because it was possibly one of the most selfish bits of play I've seen in a long time. It was just, I'm Johnson Clark-Harris. This is all about Johnson Clark-Harris. However, saying that, against Mansfield, he was brilliant. And if you can focus the good in Johnson Clark-Harris, he can be a game changer. Whether or not he can be a match winner, I'm not sure, but he can be a force for good. The only worry is he's not really scoring goals, and I'm not sure if he can play wide in a 4-3-3. But I think Johnson Clark-Harris will probably start.
Give me the choice between Biamu and coming off the bench and Clark-Harris. I'd have Biamu coming off the bench every single time. I think there's more life in him and kind of what we need. So if I've got the option of those two, I start with Clark-Harris every time, personally.
My worry is that at some point we're going to be sort of 2 or 3-0 behind, that bringing Biamu on's just too late in the day.
We said this last time.
I would go for... I nominally prefer Biamu, but I would play Johnson Clark-Harris on Friday, and I would be telling him to go out there with a bastard remit. I think he should try and Diego Costa them, shouldn't he? Where between him and Doyle, they should dark arts their way into trying to get one of their players sent off or something, which they're so capable of doing. Of all the players we've ever had, them two between them trying to wind players up has got to be an absolute goldmine. But I do think...
But Doyle's got to be careful, hasn't he? Because he should have been booked after about 2 minutes for giving that guy a kick up the arse.
How has he not been sent off this season?
Yeah.
It is some of the karate that we've seen him do alone, let alone the tackles or anything, some of just the straight up kicks that we've seen him dish out, and he's not been sent off. The guy is amazing.
I missed the point that you made. Sorry, my earphones fell out. Why does Doyle have to be careful?
He kicked the guy up the arse after about 4 minutes on Saturday.
And he
off the ball. I mean,
he got booked for dissent as well, didn't he?
Yeah, but that was after McNulty. And I know the sort of McNulty and their defenders were having a bit of... But none of their defenders ran into McNulty with their arm raised into their back like McNulty did into their defenders. I think I'd worry if we try and out-bastard them, because I think they're just as... I think they have more bastards than we do.
I'm not sure they're niggly though, are they? I think they're tough and they're big, but I didn't think they were particularly mean-spirited. I didn't think they were like a violent...
Oh, the game at Meadow Lane was real niggly, wasn't it? I mean, basically that guy should have got sent off and then managed to just hold back, didn't he?
But that was 50-50, weren't it? That game was an ill-tempered game, weren't it? I think they're capable of it, but I think that we gave as much as we got off them. But actually, at Meadow Lane, it felt like if anyone was going to get sent off, it was somebody from their team, didn't it? It's a shame, really, that they didn't push that central midfielder a bit more. I just think it's going to be so nervy on Saturday that I think there's a really, really high likelihood of massive numbers of mistakes just from the sheer... and I think that you just want to aggravate them a bit just to see if there's anybody that might not be quite there, who might just lash out and see whether you can...
That's why I'd play 2 up front on Saturday.
I would,
on Friday night. I think I'd
go back to 4-4-2.
Put so much pressure on Richard Duffy and make him sort of... Because that was one of the things that came out of the game. With both Hyam and Tom Davies just took everything early. They didn't fuck around. They didn't look like they were going to make a basic mistake in those conditions. And I think it's just a case of, if we're gonna have to play a bit more long at times, we're gonna have to go a bit more direct. I just like to have 2 up front because we know we've watched Richard Duffy. We watched Richard Duffy way too many times. He has got a mistake in him. That's why he's in League 2. So why not try and force it a bit more?
On the subject of defenders, Neil, Willis or McDonald to replace Davies, should he be ousted?
Both. I have them both in.
Presumably above Hyam, do you mean?
No, get rid of Hyam. I'd put Willis and McDonald back in. I think it's been overhyped. How people have this idea that McDonald's been poor for a load of games. He had a bad game. I don't think he's a bad player, and I think they've got stuff to prove. I think in certain scenarios, Willis is an absolute beast, and I think if he's fit enough, he could really do a good job for us in that match. He could pull through and come out, winning us that game really with some of the stuff that he's capable of. So no, I'm all in for those two coming back together, genuinely.
Paul?
I think that'd be really harsh on Hyam, to be honest. Who I thought
it was harsh on McDonald with him getting treated like this. So.
I mean, I think we all have our particular favourites on who we think's been hard done by Mark Robins. To be honest, I think that's a sort of an ongoing issue, isn't it? I agree. I think that he has been harshly treated at times this season, where he has been dropped for performances which didn't deem droppable, and then other players have played badly and then not been dropped. So I'm with you on I don't get the McDonald hate either. However, I think Hyam is the man with the shirt, and he had a good game, if not his best game for Cov on Saturday. And I think it would be a bit harsh to drop him. So I'd bring Willis in because I like having Willis's pace at this level. But whether or not, we don't know. What's the name of the guy who scored Forte for them?
Fort, yeah.
Yeah, and we're not sure how injured he is, because after Davies gave him a smack on the legs, he then sort of held his hamstrings. So if he's not playing and they go for Amliomi instead, maybe McDonald would be the better option because he is the taller, stronger guy. But I do like Willis's pace. I think that it can be a big, especially if the game's getting quite tense. I'd like to have him there just in case there are any mistakes.
Along with Grimmer as well, is in the games against Stoke and MK Dons, where it's been like absolutely backs to the wall. Yeah. There has been no one who stood taller than Willis, has there?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
When it comes to really, when the chips are down, he has really stepped up, hasn't he? If that's not too.
I don't think Notts County are going to. I think Notts County are going to sit quite deep. I think they're going to do very much what they did on Friday. I don't think they're going to try and. I don't think they're going to throw loads of people forward unless they desperately have to.
But I think I think they're
going to be quite cagey from the start.
Possibly. Okay then. I think we might wrap that up. We're an hour gone, aren't we? And another day closer to Friday. I could really do with sleeping until kick-off.
God, it's big, isn't it? This is a game from Wembley. This is mental.
You're not going to ask Laurie's question?
He asked... where is it?
Would you rather lose on Friday or at Wembley?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. Neil?
Well, Wembley.
Yeah,
I want the opportunity every single time. Why would you throw it? I don't care about looking into the future. Win, get there, and then you know. I don't like those questions anyway, but lose at Wembley rather than not.
I mean, I know I'm boring, but I just want to be drinking again. And if we go to Wembley, I can stop drinking again. So that kind of queers the deal for me. Wembley, please, God, just do it somehow. Okay. Let's wrap it up there then. So, one final quick thing before we wrap up. CJ's been in touch to ask me to talk about. There is a suggestion that anybody that's going to the game on Friday meets up around the away turnstile at about 6 o'clock to welcome the team bus and cheer the players through. Apparently Doyle and Mark Robins are fully behind it. It's not about pyros and flares and all that kind of jazz. It's just meant to be a benevolent, friendly welcome for the players and to try and G them up before the game. So if that's something you want to do, then that's available to you. If you want to get in touch, neelamptyshow@gmail.com, @neelamptyshow on Twitter. Pray for us all, because it's quite a big game on Friday. Paul, thank you.
Cheers, mate.
Neil, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be back for what we hope is the penultimate pod of the season next week. Yeah, thanks for listening. Bye.